World War III has already begun after Ukraine microchip war in Taiwan, according to Real Rubini. He says there is no easy way out of the crisis. Real Rubini talked about Iran and Israel on a collision course, fears that NATO will be dragged into the Ukraine war, and that the Biden administration expects China to attack Taiwan. The well-known economist is tired of being called Dr. Doom. He would prefer to be called Dr. Realist, he says. However, in an interview published in German publication Der Spiegel, he did little to dispel the haze of doom that accompanies him whenever he speaks. In this regard, it's worth noting that the distinguished ecologist predicted that the collapse of the housing market in the U.S. and the subsequent financial crisis. More specifically, Rubini talked about Iran and Israel being on a collision course, fears that NATO will be drawn into a Ukraine war, and that the Biden administration expects China to attack Taiwan. And he added, frankly, World War III has already effectively begun, both in Ukraine and in cyberspace. His comments come as Igor Sechin, head of Russia oil and gas giant Rosneft, and a top ally of Russian President Vladimir Putin, said that Taiwan's return to its home port is on schedule. U.S. efforts to build its own advanced microchip industry have shown that, he added, if China attacks Taiwan, ? Rubini also noted the importance of Taiwan's computer chip industry, saying, imagine the impact of a Chinese attack on Taiwan, which produces 50% of all semiconductors in the world and 80% of high-tech semiconductors. This would be a global shock. Today we rely more on semiconductors than oil. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken recently said Beijing is determined to pursue reunification with Taiwan rather than maintaining the status quo. This month, China's leader Xi Jinping, at the bi-decade Congress of the Chinese Communist Party, secured a third term, consolidating his power, and said he would never give up his nation's right to use force on Taiwan. He said, I will not tolerate any disagreement if I make the decision to pull the trigger. A deep recession? Of course, the war in Ukraine and the potential shock in Taiwan are just some of the things Rubini is worried about. Although leaders must deal with Russia and Ukraine before they take care of Iran and Israel or China, he told Der Spiegel, politicians should also think about inflation and recession, that is, stagflation. The economist recently said any claims of a soft landing in the economy are delusional. We're going to have a bad recession, stagflation, and another serious financial crisis. I think that's the basis, he said on Bloomberg Odd Lots podcast this month. Central banks, he argued, have no good options at this point. They can keep raising interest rates to fight inflation, or they can disappear and cut interest rates for fear of recession. Unfortunately, we're at the point where damned if you do, damned if you don't, Rubini said. There's no easy way out. If you fight inflation, you will have recession and financial crisis. If you don't fight inflation, you're going to have runaway inflation, and you're going to have stagflation and another financial crisis. As he wrote in New York Times article this month, there will be massive insolvencies and successful financial crises worldwide. Does he have anything positive to say? Yes, investing in real estate in the U.S. Midwest is a smart move, he says. Ultimately, much of the U.S. will become underwater or unlivable due to heat, drought, wildfires, or other disasters caused by climate change, he said. This is by Banking News GR. I've translated this for you from a Greek article. Please leave your comments. Thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.